The first call came in as a complaint, not a crisis. A young woman hadn't shown up where she said she'd be. No note, no goodbye. Just a sudden stop in the small habits that made her real to the people around her. No phone call, no ride request, no check-in. In Anchorage, people went missing for 100 reasons. But this one felt wrong. Detectives did what they could with what they had. Last known contacts, a couple of names, a rumor about a man who offered rides and cash. Nothing you could arrest. Nothing you could put on the evening news without someone rolling their eyes and saying she probably just left town. Then more women vanished. Some were reported quickly by family. Others were noticed later by friends, by co-workers, by the people who saw them night after night, and then suddenly didn't. The missing posters didn't all look alike, and the women didn't all live the same life. But the pattern, when you stared at it long enough, was absence stacked on absence. Women last seen in Anchorage or nearby towns, and then nothing. For investigators, Alaska is its own obstacle. There are places you can't reach by road. There are miles of woods and marsh and mountains where a person can disappear without leaving a trace anyone will ever find. Even when you suspect the worst, searching feels like trying to empty the ocean with a coffee cup. The bodies didn't appear all at once. They came in pieces, through hunters and hikers and chance, remains discovered in remote areas south and east of Anchorage. A shallow grave, bones scattered, a skull found where no one expected it. Each time, the same sickening reality. These weren't accidents. These women had been killed. A task force formed, and the case shifted from missing persons to homicide. Forensic teams worked what they could from degraded evidence: dental records, clothing fragments, jewelry. The smallest identifiers became precious. Some victims were named, some were not. One young woman found near the community of Eklutna would remain unidentified for decades, known only by a nickname people used because they had no other way to speak of her. While investigators chased leads, a suspect moved through the city looking ordinary. Robert Hansen was a local baker. He was married, he paid bills, he hunted, which in Alaska wasn't strange at all. He also carried a history that didn't match the face he presented: arson, theft, violence. Years earlier, he had been convicted of crimes that should have warned anyone who looked closely. But in the daily noise of policing, he blended into the background like countless other men who never became headlines. What made Hansen different was how he used the land. He targeted women he believed would be difficult to track, women who might not be believed if they reported him, women who might be judged for the circumstances that put them near him. He offered rides, he offered money, he offered an easy way out of whatever trouble they were in. Then he took control, sometimes with a gun, sometimes with restraints, always with the advantage of isolation. The most terrifying part came after the abduction. Investigators would later learn that Hansen didn't simply kill right away. He transported victims out of town, sometimes by vehicle, sometimes by small aircraft, into areas where the wilderness wasn't scenery but a weapon. He gave some of them a head start. Then he hunted them with a rifle, treating a human being as a moving target in a place where there were no witnesses and no sirens. For the missing women whose remains were never recovered, the only evidence was the pattern: the sudden vanishing, the lack of contact, the way weeks turned into months without a single confirmed sighting. Families lived in limbo. Friends replayed their last conversations, searching for meaning that wasn't there. Before that escape, the investigation was a grind of dead ends. Detectives interviewed bartenders, cab drivers, motel clerks, anyone who might remember a woman leaving with the wrong person. They chased rumors about a man who paid cash, about a pickup that lingered too long, about a house where a woman had screamed. They ran plates, they checked pawn shops for jewelry. They searched wooded pullouts and remote trails where a body could be hidden in minutes. Again and again, they found nothing solid enough to hold in court. In several cases, there wasn't even a crime scene, just a report filed by someone who cared enough to insist she wouldn't simply disappear. In others, there was no report at all, only a name passed quietly from one woman to another. Don't take a ride, don't let him isolate you, don't follow him anywhere you can't escape. Each new discovery of remains forced investigators to start over. They compared dates and last known sightings with the places bodies had been found, knowing the distance between those points could be meaningless if the killer had transportation and time. They built lists that kept changing: identified victims, unidentified victims, and women still missing who might never be recovered. That is what made Cindy Paulson's escape so crucial. It didn't just add another file. It gave police a living witness, a clear description, and a direction to move. The case broke open because one woman lived. In the summer, a woman named Cindy Paulson was working in Anchorage when Hansen approached her. He offered money. When she got into his car, the situation changed fast. She later told police he pulled a gun, bound her, and drove her to his home. Inside, she saw weapons and trophies that made her understand in an instant that she wasn't dealing with a John or a bully. She was dealing with a killer. Paulson escaped. She ran from his house and got help, still bound, still terrified, still alive. Her report gave detectives what they desperately needed: a description, a vehicle, a man who could be named. She also identified Hansen from a photo lineup. In a case built on missing people and distant graves, a living witness was the crack in the wall. When police searched Hansen's home, they found firearms, they found jewelry, they found evidence that did not belong to him. Most crucially, they found a map marked with X's that corresponded to remote locations. When investigators matched those marks with areas where remains had been discovered, the meaning was unmistakable. This wasn't rumor or coincidence. It was a record of where bodies were left. Hansen was arrested. Under pressure, he began to talk. He ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple murders, and he led investigators to additional burial sites. Some families got answers they had waited years for. Others did not. There were women still missing whose names belonged on his timeline, but whose bodies were never recovered. In the wilderness, a shallow grave can vanish. Animals scatter remains. Rivers move, trees fall. A person can be erased by distance and time even when everyone knows what happened to them. Hansen was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He would die behind bars decades later. But his death didn't end the story for the missing. For those families, the final day never arrived. There was no knock at the door that brought certainty, only the slow realization that searching had become a permanent state of being. In Alaska, the landscape doesn't care about closure. It keeps what it takes. And in the files left behind, maps, statements, evidence tags, there are still blank spaces where a name should be, where a location should be, where a body should have been found. Those blank spaces are the true cost of predation in a place built for disappearance. Because for every victim whose remains were recovered, there was another woman who simply stopped existing in the world everyone could see. Not because she vanished on her own, because someone made sure she could not come back. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.